Imagine if just 1% improvement every day could completely transform your life. What if the secret to success wasn't about massive, overnight changes, but the small, consistent habits you build daily? Atomic Habits by James Clear reveals how tiny changes, when compounded over time, create remarkable results. In this summary, you'll discover how habits shape your identity, why systems matter more than goals, and the science-backed strategies to break bad habits while building powerful ones. Stay with me, and let's unlock the power of small habits that lead to extraordinary success. Chapter 1. The Surprising Power of Atomic Habits. The first chapter establishes the foundational idea of the book, that small, seemingly insignificant habits, when compounded over time, can create extraordinary results. The author illustrates this with the transformation of the British cycling team, which had experienced nearly a century of failure before implementing a strategy of marginal gains. By improving various aspects of their performance by just 1%, they managed to dominate the Olympics and win the Tour de France multiple times. The key message is that habits work like compound interest. They accumulate over time, leading to substantial benefits or harmful consequences. This compounding effect can be positive or negative depending on whether the habits are constructive or destructive. The author emphasizes that people often overestimate the importance of defining moments and underestimate the value of consistent, small improvements. Just as a 1% improvement each day can make you 37 times better in a year, a 1% decline can reduce you close to zero. Takeaways. Aim for consistent, incremental improvements. Small changes are more sustainable and impactful over time. Focus on building systems, not setting goals. Systems create an environment where success is inevitable. Chapter 2. How your habits shape your identity and vice versa. This chapter explores the powerful relationship between identity and habits, arguing that lasting change stems from identity transformation rather than mere goal setting. While most people focus on changing their outcomes, like losing weight or earning more money, the author suggests shifting focus to identity-based habits, such as becoming a healthy person or a financially disciplined individual. When you see yourself as a certain kind of person, you naturally adopt habits aligned with that identity. The author breaks down 3 levels of behavior change: outcomes, processes, and identity. The deepest and most effective change happens at the level of identity. For example, instead of aiming to read a book, see yourself as a reader. Each action you take reinforces your identity. Every healthy meal reinforces the belief that you're a healthy person, and every workout reaffirms that you're someone who values fitness. Over time, these actions accumulate into a stronger, more aligned self-concept. Takeaways. Shift your focus from achieving specific outcomes to becoming the person you want to be. Reframe your habits as evidence of the identity you aspire to adopt. Instead of saying, "I want to quit smoking," say, "I am not a smoker." Chapter 3. How to build better habits in 4 simple steps. This chapter introduces a straightforward framework for understanding and building better habits. The author explains that every habit follows a 4-step pattern: cue, craving, response, and reward. These 4 stages form a feedback loop that drives our automatic behaviors. By understanding and manipulating each stage, we can effectively build good habits and break bad ones. Cue, the trigger that initiates the behavior. It could be a time of day, location, emotional state, or preceding action. Craving, the motivational force behind every habit. It is not the habit itself we crave, but the change in state it delivers. Response, the action or habit you perform. If it requires too much effort or motivation, it's unlikely to occur. Reward, the end goal. It satisfies the craving and reinforces the habit loop, making it more likely to repeat. This chapter emphasizes that to change your habits, you must change your approach to these 4 stages. Make cues obvious, cravings attractive, responses easy, and rewards satisfying. This framework is foundational, and each of the following chapters builds upon it to provide practical strategies for habit formation. Takeaways. To build good habits, Make cues obvious, cravings attractive, responses easy, and rewards satisfying. Understand the habit loop? Cue, craving, response, reward to gain control over your habits. Chapter 4. The Man Who Didn't Look Right. This chapter focuses on the power of cues and how making them obvious can trigger positive habits. The author shares the story of a woman whose intuition saved her husband's life because she recognized subtle, habitual changes in his behavior. This example illustrates the power of cues in habit formation and the importance of awareness in identifying triggers. The author explains that we often overlook the cues driving our habits because they are deeply ingrained and automatic. To build better habits, you need to become aware of these cues. One effective method is habit stacking, pairing a new habit with an existing one. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 2 minutes. This approach makes the cue more obvious and strengthens the habit loop. This chapter also discusses the power of environment, how the spaces around us can either support or hinder our habits. If you want to drink more water, for example, place a water bottle on your desk. The environment should be designed to make desired habits easier and undesired ones harder. Takeaways. Increase awareness of cues to understand and change your habits. Use habit stacking. Takeaways. Increase awareness of cues to understand and change your habits. Use habit stacking to create new routines by pairing new habits with existing ones. Design your environment to make good habits more accessible and bad habits more difficult. Chapter 5. The best way to start a new habit. This chapter focuses on the importance of making habits obvious and actionable through intentional planning. The concept of implementation intentions is introduced, a strategy where you specify when, where, and how you'll perform a new habit. For example, instead of vaguely deciding to exercise more, you plan, I will exercise at the gym for 30 minutes at 6 p.m. on weekdays. The clearer the plan, the more likely it is to be executed. Another key idea is habit stacking, a practical way to anchor new habits to existing ones. This technique uses the formula, after current habit, I will new habit. For instance, after brushing my teeth, I will meditate for 5 minutes. Habit stacking builds consistency by leveraging established routines. The chapter also emphasizes using visual cues, like placing a book on your pillow to encourage nightly reading. Takeaways. Create clear implementation intentions to make your habits more actionable. Use habit stacking to connect new behaviors to existing routines. Adjust your environment to create visual triggers that prompt positive habits. Chapter 6. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. Here, the author challenges the idea that motivation alone is enough to sustain habits. Instead, the environment often plays a more significant role in shaping behavior. A well-designed environment can make positive behaviors obvious and negative ones less appealing. For instance, if you want to eat healthier, keep fruits visible and junk food out of sight. The chapter shares examples from supermarket layouts and office spaces, demonstrating how environmental design can influence choices. The key is to reduce the friction for desired behaviors and increase friction for unwanted ones. If you want to reduce screen time, keep your phone in another room. Conversely, to practice the guitar more, place it in a visible spot. Takeaways. Design your environment to make good habits more accessible and bad habits less convenient. Reduce friction for beneficial behaviors and increase friction for negative ones. Motivation can fluctuate, but a well-structured environment can consistently prompt the right actions. Chapter 7. The Secret to Self-Control. This chapter examines the limitations of self-control and the power of removing temptation altogether. The idea is that disciplined people are not necessarily more self-controlled. They're often better at structuring their environments to avoid temptations. For example, people who rarely eat junk food often don't keep it in their homes. The author explains that eliminating cues that trigger bad habits is more effective than relying solely on willpower. If you struggle with social media distractions, delete the app or turn off notifications. If overspending is an issue, leave your credit card at home. Self-control is a skill that can be trained, but it's more sustainable to design an environment that minimizes temptation. Takeaways. Self-control can be built over time, but it's more effective to avoid temptation by modifying your environment. If you want to break a bad habit, reduce exposure to its cues. Design your space to promote positive habits and minimize the chances of slipping into unwanted behaviors. Chapter 8. How to make a habit irresistible. This chapter explores the principle of making habits attractive to encourage consistency. The author introduces the concept of temptation bundling, a strategy where you pair an action you need to do, a habit, with something you want to do, a reward. For example, if you love watching Netflix but struggle to exercise, you can only watch your favorite show while walking on the treadmill. By associating positive feelings with the habit, it becomes more enticing. The chapter also delves into the neuroscience of habits, explaining the role of dopamine in craving and motivation. Dopamine spikes not just during the experience of a reward, but in anticipation of it. Therefore, the craving for a habit is often more motivating than the habit itself. Leveraging this anticipation can make habits more appealing and sustainable. Social influences also play a role in shaping habits. We tend to imitate the habits of those we admire, align with, or wish to connect with. Being part of a group where a desired behavior is the norm can reinforce your commitment to the habit. Takeaways. Use temptation bundling to pair habits with enjoyable activities, making them more appealing. Increase the anticipation of your habit by visualizing its positive outcomes. Surround yourself with people who have the habits you want to develop. Chapter 9. The role of family and friends in shaping your habits. This chapter dives into the powerful influence of social environments on habits. The people around us shape our behaviors, often more than we realize. We imitate the habits of three social groups: the close, family and friends; the many, society; and the powerful, those with status. If your social group values fitness, you're more likely to work out. Conversely, if your circle normalizes unhealthy eating, adopting healthy habits becomes harder. The chapter highlights that belonging often trumps personal desires. We tend to adopt habits to gain acceptance and avoid rejection. The key to leveraging this principle is to join groups where your desired behavior is the norm. If you want to become a runner, join a running club. If you want to write more, surround yourself with writers. Shared identity strengthens habit formation. Takeaways. Surround yourself with people who embody the habits you desire to develop. Understand that habits are not just about personal preferences, but also a reflection of your community. If you want to change, find a group where your desired behavior is normal. Chapter 10. How to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. Bad habits are not simply failures of willpower. They're often driven by deeper needs and unresolved issues. This chapter emphasizes the importance of understanding the root cause of your bad habits. Many of our unwanted behaviors are ways to cope with stress, boredom, or anxiety. For example, overeating might be a response to emotional distress rather than hunger. The author introduces the strategy of reframing, where you alter your perception of the habit to change your response. Instead of seeing exercise as a burden, view it as a way to relieve stress or boost your mood. He also suggests creating a habit scorecard, a list of your daily habits to identify the cues that trigger undesirable behavior. Recognizing these cues helps in altering or eliminating them. Takeaways. Identify the real need behind your bad habits and address it directly. Use habit scorecards to become aware of your patterns and triggers. Reframe negative habits by associating them with positive outcomes. Chapter 11. Walk slowly, but never backward. This chapter emphasizes the importance of consistency over intensity. Many people attempt drastic changes to their habits, but struggle to maintain them over time. The author suggests focusing on maintaining small, sustainable habits rather than chasing quick, dramatic results. The key is to focus on showing up consistently, even if it's just a minimal effort. For instance, instead of trying to write 1,000 words a day, commit to writing just one sentence daily. The idea of the 2-minute rule is introduced, a strategy to make habits so simple that you can't say no. The principle is that any new habit should take less than 2 minutes to do. If you want to start reading, read just one page. If you wish to meditate, start with 2 minutes. This approach builds a foundation for long-term consistency because the barrier to entry is low. Takeaways. Prioritize consistency over intensity to build habits that last. Use the 2-minute rule to make starting a habit easy and achievable. Small actions sustained over time lead to significant, compounding progress. Chapter 12. The Law of Least Effort. This chapter is centered on reducing friction to make good habits easier to adopt. The idea is simple. The more effort a behavior requires, the less likely it is to occur. Therefore, reducing the friction associated with good habits while increasing the friction for bad habits is a practical way to influence behavior. If you want to eat healthier, prepare healthy snacks in advance. If you want to avoid watching TV, remove the batteries from the remote. The author also introduces the concept of priming your environment, preparing your space to encourage the behaviors you want. If you plan to study, set up your desk with everything you need beforehand. Making desirable habits more accessible increases the chances of sticking with them. Takeaways. Reduce friction for positive habits and increase it for negative ones. Prime your environment to make desirable behaviors easier to start. Simplify your routines to encourage consistency and reduce resistance. Chapter 13. How to stop procrastinating by using the 2-minute rule. Building on the idea of simplicity, this chapter focuses on the 2-minute rule as a way to overcome procrastination. The concept is straightforward. When you're struggling to start a task, just commit to 2 minutes of doing it. This small action lowers the barrier to entry, and once you start, it's easier to continue. For example, if you dread exercise, just put on your workout clothes and do 2 minutes of stretching. The chapter also discusses the idea of decisive moments, small choices that shape the trajectory of your day. For example, deciding whether to check your phone in the morning can determine whether you start your day productively or get distracted. By mastering these small, critical moments, you can guide yourself toward better decisions. Takeaways. Use the 2-minute rule to start any new habit without overwhelm. Identify and optimize decisive moments that impact your day. Focus on starting, not finishing. Once you start, momentum often follows. Chapter 14. How to make good habits inevitable and bad habits impossible. This chapter dives into the concept of commitment devices, tools and strategies that lock you into future behaviors, reducing the chance of slipping back into bad habits. Commitment devices can take many forms. A financial commitment, like signing up for a gym membership, a social commitment, making a promise to a friend, or an environmental adjustment, putting your alarm clock across the room to force yourself to get out of bed. The idea is to make bad habits difficult and good habits easy. The author explains that humans are more likely to choose options that require the least effort. By using commitment devices, we can preload our future decisions to align with our long-term goals. If you struggle with late-night snacking, don't keep unhealthy snacks at home. If you want to write more, schedule writing time in your calendar. The more you automate beneficial habits, the easier they become to maintain. Takeaways. Use commitment devices to reduce the friction of good habits and increase the friction of bad ones. Automate habits as much as possible to minimize decision fatigue. Make unwanted behaviors inconvenient and make desired behaviors convenient. Chapter 15. The Cardinal Rule of Behavior Change. This chapter introduces the concept of the cardinal rule of behavior change. What is immediately rewarded is repeated, and what is immediately punished is avoided. Unlike motivation or willpower, which can fluctuate, the anticipation of a reward or consequence can significantly influence behavior. Immediate rewards are far more effective for habit reinforcement than delayed rewards. The chapter suggests using a habit tracker, a simple tool to visually track your progress. Marking off each day you complete your habit reinforces the sense of achievement, creating a chain of success. The don't break the chain strategy, popularized by comedian Jerry Seinfeld, is an example of leveraging visual motivation to maintain consistency. If a habit lacks an immediate reward, try to add one. like rewarding yourself with a small treat after a workout. Takeaways. Immediate rewards are crucial for reinforcing positive habits. Use habit trackers or visual cues to maintain consistency. If you miss a habit once, make sure not to miss it twice. Avoid the never miss twice rule. Chapter 16. How to stick with good habits every day. This chapter emphasizes the importance of maintaining consistency over perfection. The idea is that perfection is unattainable, but showing up regularly strengthens habits. The author introduces the concept of habit shaping, where you gradually adjust a habit to become more challenging as you become more comfortable with it. If you want to start running, begin with walking, then jogging, and eventually increase the pace. The chapter also explores the concept of identity-based habits, emphasizing that successful habit formation relies more on being consistent with your identity than on achieving specific results. Instead of aiming to read 50 books a year, identify yourself as a reader. This subtle shift reinforces the habit even when setbacks occur. Takeaways. Consistency is more important than intensity. Strive to show up, even if the effort is minimal. Gradually scale your habits to become more challenging, but prioritize showing up. Reinforce your identity through consistent, small actions. Aim for progress, not perfection. Chapter 17. How an accountability partner can change everything. This chapter emphasizes the power of accountability in maintaining habits. Having someone to check on your progress or share your goals with can significantly increase your commitment. The idea is that when you know someone is observing your behavior, you are more likely to adhere to your habits due to the fear of social judgment or letting someone down. The author suggests finding an accountability partner or joining a group where your desired habits are the norm. Public accountability, like sharing your goals on social media or committing to a challenge with friends, can be powerful. Additionally, the concept of a habit contract is introduced, a written agreement that outlines your commitment and consequences if you fail. For example, promising to pay a friend if you skip a workout can motivate you to stay consistent. Takeaways. Share your goals with someone who can keep you accountable. Use public commitments to increase your sense of responsibility. Create a habit contract with specific consequences for not following through. Chapter 18. The truth about talent, when genes matter and when they don't. This chapter explores the role of genetics in habit formation. While talent and predisposition can give individuals advantages in certain areas, they do not determine your ultimate success. Instead, the focus should be on matching your habits to your personality and strengths. The key is to select habits that are aligned with your natural inclinations and interests. For example, if you're a morning person, schedule your workouts in the morning. The author emphasizes the Goldilocks zone, a state where a habit is neither too easy nor too difficult, keeping you engaged and motivated. When habits are aligned with your natural abilities and personality, they're easier to maintain and more enjoyable. The idea is not to compare yourself to others, but to maximize your strengths and work with, not against, your nature. Takeaways. Design your habits to align with your natural strengths and preferences. Focus on habits that challenge you just enough to stay motivated. The Goldilocks zone. Don't compare your progress to others. Focus on maximizing your unique strengths. Chapter 19. The Goldilocks rule. How to stay motivated in life and work. The Goldilocks rule states that humans experience peak motivation when working on tasks that are at the edge of their current abilities, not too easy and not too difficult. This idea is vital for maintaining long-term habits because boredom or frustration can derail consistency. The author explains that mastery requires a balance between success and challenge. If a habit is too easy, it becomes boring. If it's too difficult, it becomes discouraging. This chapter also introduces the concept of sustainable boredom. Even the most exciting habits will become monotonous over time. The ability to show up and perform regardless of motivation is a significant determinant of success. Professionals stick to their habits even when they don't feel like it, while amateurs rely on inspiration alone. Takeaways. Keep your habits in the Goldilocks zone, challenging but achievable. Embrace the monotony of mastery. Consistency trumps enthusiasm. Learn to show up even when motivation is low. Chapter 20. The Downside of Creating Good Habits. This chapter explores the unintended consequences of building good habits. While positive habits can lead to exceptional results, they can also lead to complacency. When habits become automatic, you may stop paying attention to their effectiveness or relevance. For instance, a successful entrepreneur who builds a routine that once worked may resist change, even when market conditions shift. The author warns that habits can create automaticity, leading to a lack of mindfulness. Over time, this can cause a plateau in growth or even regression. The solution is to routinely review and reflect on your habits. Periodically ask yourself whether a habit still serves your long-term goals or needs adjustment. Takeaways. Regularly evaluate your habits to ensure they align with your evolving goals. Avoid becoming complacent with success. Strive for growth, not stagnation. Be mindful of routines to avoid becoming a victim of your own success. Conclusion. The secret to results that last. In the final chapter, the author emphasizes that lasting change is not about reaching a particular goal, but about maintaining systems that support continual improvement. The idea is to focus less on achieving a specific outcome and more on becoming the kind of person who embodies the habits you desire. The book encourages viewing habits not as a finish line, but as a lifestyle that compounds over time. Ultimately, small habits are like seeds. Their outcomes may not be immediately visible, but they grow slowly, steadily, and substantially. Just as a tree starts as a seedling, life-changing transformations begin with tiny, consistent actions. The true power of habits lies in their ability to shape your identity and redefine your potential over time. Takeaways. Focus on developing systems, not chasing goals. Systems create sustainable success. Consistency, not perfection, is the key to habit mastery. Understand that success is not a final destination, but a continuous process of growth. Why Atomic Habits is life-changing. Atomic Habits is more than just a book about behavior change. It's a manual for life transformation. The principles shared are practical, evidence-based, and accessible, making them applicable to anyone seeking improvement. This book can help you cultivate discipline, develop a growth mindset, and gain mastery over your behavior. Essential skills for personal and professional success. The idea that small habits compound over time is not just inspiring, but empowering. It means that anyone, regardless of their starting point, can create positive change. The simplicity of focusing on a 1% improvement daily resonates because it's achievable, sustainable, and leads to extraordinary results. Final thoughts and call to action. Atomic Habits equips you with the tools to build a better life, one small step at a time. Start small, stay consistent, and watch how incremental changes lead to massive growth. Take the first step today, whether it's reading a page, doing a push-up, or writing a sentence. The power of habits lies not just in what you do, but in who you become.